I always loved rally racing, but it wasn't until my 40s that I really started getting into it. I bought a motorcycle and met some other guys who were already taking part in competitions. It became a fun hobby, and every year I started participating in these competitions as well. This time, I had to leave at night because my bike wasn't ready to ride, so I had to get to the competition site early in the morning. The plan was for the guys to help me get the bike running before the start. I was driving with my bike on the back of my truck. It was around 11 p.m. when my truck broke down. This was my biggest nightmare. To get to these competitions, I had to travel far into the countryside, passing by farms and rural areas. Now, my truck had stopped in the middle of nowhere. It was a 4-hour drive, and I had done maybe 2.5 hours. I wasn't close to the farm, and I was surely far from home. The last town I had passed was maybe an hour ago, so I was really stuck. There was no signal to make calls, and my phone battery was running low. I tried to check what was wrong with my truck, but had no luck figuring it out. I remember it was a dirty road, with only trees and plantations everywhere. It looked like an endless road. I decided to walk a little to see if I could find any farmhouse to ask for help, but there was nothing in sight. I kept walking, hoping I'd get to the next town at some point, but I was also scared to leave my truck behind. I had no choice. I was alone, no one was passing on the road, and there was no shelter. Suddenly, I started hearing sounds coming from the woods. They really sounded like human screams, but they all sounded the same. It had to be some wildlife around, which I didn't know if it was dangerous or not. I was already a little far away from my truck. Still, I was determined to find shelter. At some point in the middle of nowhere, I saw a little farmhouse far away. Maybe they had a phone I could use to contact someone, or maybe a bed for me to spend the night and figure out what to do during the day. So I got to this house, knocked, and an old man opened it. Unfortunately, what also greeted me was his shotgun. He pointed it right at me and spoke in a language I couldn't understand. I was in shock. What had just happened? How did I get to this point? Hoping he just wanted to scare me away, I said sorry and ran for my life, trying to run in a zigzag pattern in case he shot. After a few seconds, I heard the old man fire a shot at me. Luckily, it didn't hit me. I kept running and glanced back to see that he didn't seem to be running after me, but he also didn't seem to have gone back to his house. I decided to run back to my truck. And of course, all the way back, I heard those screams deep inside the forest. I couldn't believe it. It had to be a dream. When I finally reached my truck, I got inside, hid under a blanket, and laid there. I didn't know what else to do besides wait for daylight. There was no way the old man would follow me. It was too far away, so I just hoped I was safe. All night, I woke up to those screaming sounds, and from time to time, I'd hear tapping on the roof. For sure, it was some bugs or things falling from the trees, but after all of this situation, everything seemed to make me scared. So I waited. Early in the morning, I woke up to the sound of another truck. I quickly got up, took a look, and saw another 2 men with motorcycles on the back. I went out, and thankfully, those men were also going to the competition. They helped me with some water and food and took me with them, so I could at least reach the next town to ask for help towing my truck, and that's what I did. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the competition that year, but at least I was safe, and that was the most important thing for me. I had driven out to visit an old friend who lived in a remote area, hoping for a peaceful weekend away from the city's chaos. The visit had been pleasant, but I ended up leaving much later than I had planned. By the time I hit the road, it was already night. Suddenly, out of nowhere, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, blindingly bright through the fog. The car behind me began flashing its lights and honking. My heart jumped, and I wondered if I had somehow caused an accident without realizing it. I decided to pull over to see what was wrong. I stopped my car on the side of the road, and the other vehicle pulled up in front of me, blocking my way forward. A tall guy emerged from the car, and through the fog, I could sense something was off. Knocking on my window, he leaned in close and said that something had escaped from my car and hit his windshield, and he asked me to come and see it. My heart pounded, and every instinct told me to stay in the car, so I replied that I wasn't getting out, trying to keep my voice steady. At that moment, His eyes darkened. He reached for my door handle, and I felt a surge of panic. I was glad the door was locked. He jiggled the handle more forcefully, insisting, "Come on, just take a look." But his tone was now edged with frustration and anger. My pulse was racing, and I knew I had to act fast. I started the car, praying it would start quickly. The engine roared to life, and he banged on my window, his face contorted with rage. I reversed sharply and managed to maneuver around his car. I sped away, glancing in the rearview mirror to see him standing in the middle of the road, watching me. My heart didn't stop racing until I was safely home. And even then, the eerie encounter replayed in my mind over and over. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something truly dangerous. The creepy feeling he gave me haunted my dreams for weeks. I was visiting my parents for the weekend, and on the way back, I stopped at a gas station on some quiet roads. The gas station was almost empty, with only one big man sitting in front of the convenience store, reading a book. As I passed, he waved at me and smiled. After filling my tank, I got back on the road. 10 minutes later, I passed by a truck parked on the side of the road. When I looked, I couldn't believe my eyes. On its back was the same big guy who had been sitting at the gas station, reading the same book, wearing the same clothes. He smiled and waved at my car the same way he had done at the gas station. But this was impossible. When I left, he was still there. It was so weird, but I could have been mistaken. I even wanted to go back to the gas station just to see if he was still there, but I tried to forget about it. A week later, I was at work and overheard a colleague telling another about a similar situation he had encountered at the same place. I told them that I had experienced the same thing, and they were in shock. What on earth could that be? A few weeks later, the same colleague came to me and said he couldn't believe that I had experienced the same thing, so he decided to go to that gas station again to see if he would spot the man. He said that the first time, he wasn't there, but the second time, there he was, sitting, smiling, and waving. This colleague continued his trip, only to find the same situation again, the same man parked on the side of the road reading. He then turned around and went back to the station. When he got there, the man wasn't there anymore. Curious, he asked the cashier at the shop about this man. The lady told him that no man had been sitting there the whole day, but he wasn't the first one to ask her about these eerie encounters. She said she's used to people often asking about it. I never believed in ghosts, but this gave me a weird feeling. I decided never to go to that gas station again.